So any minute now, Harvard University will reach a landmark settlement with the Trump administration to pay it $500 million so that it can regain its federal funding and end months-long investigations into the school.
UCLA is also currently reviewing a $1 billion settlement offer from the Trump administration after the government froze hundreds of millions of dollars of its funding. And both of these schools and many others are being targeted because of the pro-Palestinian protests that happened there.
And last month, both Columbia and Brown also paid million-dollar settlements to appease the Trump administration. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said the Trump administration is successfully reversing the decades-long woke capture of our nation's higher education institutions.
And that really reveals what's at the heart of these attacks. They're essentially holding billions of dollars of funding, $2.6 billion in Harvard's case alone, hostage as retaliation against what they call these institutions' liberal agenda. And by settling, these schools are to some extent capitulating to their demands. Like Brown agreed to adopt the government's definition of male and female and remove any consideration of race from its admissions process.
And in addition to gutting DEI programs and in UPenn's case, blocking trans athletes from female sports, the Trump administration is really cracking down on cases of anti-Semitism at these universities. They've actually even launched a federal task force to specifically combat anti-Semitism in schools. And we're sure you all remember last year how Columbia University was at the epicenter of this conversation after all the pro-Palestinian protests and encampments.
And even though these students were exercising their First Amendment right and these protests were largely peaceful and the school doesn't admit any wrongdoing, Columbia agreed to a slew of actions that they say are aimed to curb anti-Semitism on campus. So like they're naming new faculty members to have joint positions within Jewish studies and economics and poli-science. They're also adopting the anti-Semitism definition used by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance and providing additional university-wide training on anti-Semitism.
And it's not just Columbia. The administration has announced investigating 60 other universities over their handling of alleged anti-Semitism cases. So with these investigations, the funding cuts, students being punished over protesting, and ICE agents patrolling college campuses, students are going back to school this fall under a very different political backdrop where colleges are essentially bending their knees to Trump's ideological will.
Plus, brand new data shows that Trump's heightened vetting of student visas and his travel ban have already led to a drop in foreign student applicants by 35%. So we've reported previously on how Trump has added extra scrutiny to applicants' social media profiles. They're combing now for any expression of pro-Palestinian sentiment or critiques of Trump's foreign policy decisions.
And in June, he also signed a proclamation to restrict the entry of people from 19 countries. So that was including Afghanistan, Haiti, Iran, Yemen, Cuba, Laos, and Venezuela to make sure that the people, quote, do not intend to harm Americans or our national interests. So it's impossible for students from those countries to get education visas.
And apparently the State Department has been restricting and sometimes all out suspending visa appointments, sometimes for up to a month at a time. Even for countries like India and China, which send a lot of students here, there are often no new appointments offered. And if these problems persist, international student enrollment could drop by 30 to 40% this fall, which is a loss of 150,000 students.
Trump even blocked Harvard from trying to allow any international students to its school, which is insane, but thankfully a judge overturned that. It just really feels like this administration is painting all international students as like crazy radicals.
Well, I mean, Rubio literally said, we're not going to be importing activists into the United States. They're here to study. They're here to go to class. They're not here to lead activist movements that are disruptive and undermine our universities. I think it's lunacy to continue to allow that.
So we spoke to Veronica Salama, an attorney for the NYCLU, which is a branch of the ACLU, to learn how she's gearing up to protect students' rights in this coming school year. Veronica represented Mahmoud Khalil, who we all remember was arrested by ICE agents after participating in a pro-Palestinian protest while attending Columbia.
Yeah, in case you don't remember, he was set to be deported even though he's a legal permanent resident and he's married to a U.S. citizen. But then he was released on bail in June after being detained for 104 days, which actually caused him to miss the birth of his first child. And now he's suing the Trump administration for $20 million, alleging he was falsely imprisoned, maliciously prosecuted, and smeared as an anti-Semite.
So, Veronica, you worked on Mahmoud Khalil's case. How shocked were you by this case when it was first brought to you?
I mean, when we first learned, it was horrific and shocking. It was very obviously retaliatory. I don't know if you both saw the video footage of Mahmoud and his wife in the actual foyer of their building when these officers who are not wearing uniform, are asking him questions and asking him about his visa. And he's sort of correcting them and saying, well, I have a green card, not a visa. And then eventually they start taking him away, and you could hear his wife's voice just crack. Unbeknownst to so many of us, that was just the first of so many to come.
The Trump administration is launching investigations into universities and freezing their funding, essentially holding it hostage. And it seems like they're doing this just to retaliate against what they consider their woke liberal agenda. How unprecedented is it for the federal government to try to control private institutions like this?
Yeah, I mean, they're not hiding the ball at all. The administration's executive orders and their threats against institutions, they are not being subtle. They are saying explicitly that we don't want you to care and to emphasize the lived experiences of marginalized communities, that your goal should not be to bring together diverse communities. And it is unprecedented. It's completely unconstitutional. And it's really terrifying. You would hope that universities would take the opportunity to actually stand up to an administration like this, that they are just quietly bowing down. It's really disappointing. And it's our opportunity, I think, to really hold these institutions accountable and to ask them, who do they serve? Do they serve the student body? Do they serve their donor interests?
We're glad you mentioned that these actions are unconstitutional, because we're thinking about this all the time. Our audience is thinking, like, are Trump's moves legal? And should we expect to see more moves like this in the coming 2025, 2026 year?
Yeah, I mean, you should definitely expect to see many more challenges to the Trump administration's actions. At every step of the way, we are preparing to litigate against the administration. We have already filed lawsuit against the administration, and we have seen district court orders striking down some of these executive orders.
Trump has also wanted to punish universities for allowing, of course, pro-Palestinian protests and alleged incidents of anti-Semitism. How do you think this will affect students' thoughts on free speech and protesting on campus?
When Mahmoud was first arrested, it had a really terrifying, chilling effect on the student population. Students sort of retracted. They stopped going to protests. They made their social medias private. They started deleting things. At the same time, we are also seeing students filled with righteous indignation about what's happening, showing up 3 times as much and, standing up and saying, like, what will be the last straw? Something has to give here.
And you mentioned how a lot of universities are settling with Trump. At first, they were standing up for the students and saying we're not, especially Harvard, saying we're never going to accept a settlement. And now we're hearing any minute they could agree to a settlement. With that being like the environment, do you think schools, to try to avoid Trump's wrath this year, will just totally crack down on protests?
There is no soothing this administration. Like, there is nothing, like, in the same way that you have made, the right way to protest a moving target for your students, this administration is going to make the right way to appease it a moving target for you as well. And so it's just a fiction to believe that you can sort of satisfy the cravings of this administration by capitulating in this way.
We're wondering if the Trump administration at all has a case here, because of course we're trying to protect the rights of students, and students on a specific side of the issue say that, they have felt uncomfortable, they have felt unsafe.
The administration is not operating with the intent to make students safer. It's very important for officials not to conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, or to use hate incidents as a pretext for silencing political views that they oppose. There is very strong Supreme Court precedent that stands for this exact proposition. The administration, in many ways, unfortunately, might fool some people into thinking that they have their best interests in mind.
We know you do a lot of work involving ICE, and we've all seen what Trump has done in LA and DC, and now says he's going to do in Chicago. He says New York is next. So if he starts sending ICE here and carrying out raids like we've seen in other cities, how would the NYCLU respond?
It's actually already kicked into high gear here in New York. Half of the arrests of immigrants in New York have been in courthouses since Trump has taken office. That means that there are non-citizens dutifully appearing for their check-ins, for their hearings, and being snatched and taken into an ICE detention center for doing what they are being told they are supposed to do. We are working with our partners, our ACLU affiliates in other states to really prepare for what's to come here. But that's not to say that things haven't geared up here already.
How is the NYCLU advising colleges and students to kind of prepare for ICE agents that might start patrolling campuses?
We encourage people to really just stay in the know. It's often really hard and overwhelming to just see some of this awful news happening all the time, but it's such a crucial part of your ability to make change. If you don't know what's happening outside of your front door, you're not able to engage. Rights This Way podcast. We often have really great speakers talking about these like very live issues and engage as much as possible.